It's our 3-year-old. We're starting to get worried he's not eating enough, and I'm getting a little bit tired of asking him to take just one more bite.
Welcome to Late Night Notes, the parenting podcast that answers the questions keeping you up at night. I'm your host, journalist, author and mum of 4, Madeleine Grummet. So what's on for tonight? It's toddler meal times. We'll dive into the ups and downs of toddlers' appetites, likes and dislikes, how to know they're eating enough, plus plenty of expert tips for mealtime success. But first, let's have a listen to tonight's Late Night Note.
Hey there, I'm Ash, and at the moment, mealtimes are a bit of a struggle at our place. It's our 3-year-old. He'll snack on things he likes during the day. He's all about the hummus and carrots. But when it gets to lunch or dinner, he'll get distracted, pick at his food, or say that he just doesn't like anything on his plate. If it's something he does actually like, that'll usually get eaten, but it's pretty hard to get him interested in anything else. My wife's parents look after him a couple of days a week, and they're having the exact same problem. We're starting to get worried he's not eating enough, and I'm getting a little bit tired of asking him to take just one more bite. So if you've got any tips, we're super grateful.
If you're raising kids, which, yes, means feeding them too, you're likely to have picky phases on the menu at some point. My kids are all grown up now, but gosh, do I have memories. So I'm really curious to hear what our expert has to say. Tonight, we've got Dr. Lexi Frydenberg back on the podcast. Hi, Lexi.
It's great to be here again, Mads.
Lexi is a general paediatrician based at the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne and the Victorian Children's Clinic. She has over 20 years of experience helping children and their families. Now, you're an amazing source of knowledge on all things to do with children wellbeing and particularly toddlers' eating habits. So let's dig in. So Lexi, we've just heard from Ash, who's having a few issues with their toddler at meal times. What's the first thing that you say to parents where their toddler is being a bit choosy about what they're eating, when they're eating and where they're eating?
I really try and reassure parents and carers that it is normal, it is typical part of development for toddlers to be choosy, picky, fussy, and we all go through it at some stage.
And toddlers can change their preferences a lot from hour to day, can't they, depending on texture or colour. How do you think about helping parents to support them when their toddlers are changing their preferences all the time?
I try and remind parents or have a conversation with parents that actually us as adults, our appetite varies throughout a day. What we want to eat varies throughout a day or over a week as well. So, having a conversation that it is quite typical and normal for children to want to eat a lot in the morning and may not want to eat much that afternoon. They may go through 1 or 2 days where they eat really well and eat a huge variety of foods, and then they decide they don't want to eat those foods for the next few days. So it can be incredibly frustrating, but it is very typical of toddlers.
And toddlers are busy people and they change a lot. What about things like their activity level? Can that change their eating preferences?
Yeah, so activity level, the growth phase and stage that they're going through, the weather. There are so many things that affect our appetite. And as I said, it can vary from morning to night, day to day, weeks or months. So just expecting that and knowing what is typical is really important.
And of course, toddlers love exploring and trying new things. And so is food exploration and preference changing, is that part of their growing independence?
Yeah, so toddlers like to be assertive. They like to assert independence. They want to have choice. And that's why I always say, try and make it fun, make it messy, give children choice and involve them from an early age in food preparation and in eating as a family.
So one of the things, Lexi, that we heard in the late night note was Ash was a bit worried about whether their toddler was eating enough. And I remember as a parent, you can worry, can they survive on this much food? How much should they be eating day to day? How do you know when your toddler is eating enough?
Yeah, so this is a really common question I get asked as a paediatrician and at school pickup by other parents, because I think as parents, we want to make sure our children are well fed and well nourished. The really reassuring thing is that children's appetites do vary, but if they're eating healthy meals, preferably 3 healthy meals, and then adding some healthy snacks and you offering healthy snacks in between meals, most children will eat a variety of food. It's really important not to get too caught up on what they've eaten that actual day. As I mentioned, it varies. So really think about the whole week. What have they eaten over the week? What types of food? They don't have to eat every single type of vegetable or fruit, but it's okay for them to try different foods at different times.
So what you're saying is then if your child eats not that much one day, but the next day they do, and over the course of the week, there's a really good balanced diet, then that's okay. It's not about ensuring they cover off all the food groups in one day.
Yeah, I just want parents to be able to take the pressure off, because food and preparing food and eating food together should be a fun social activity. And I don't want them to get too stressed about it.
And is it true that children can naturally judge how much food they need?
Yeah, so, children are pretty good judges of their own appetite. Yes, they get distracted and they may not eat because they want to go out and play. But, even babies from a very early age, they will tell you when they've had enough food. So babies who are breastfeeding or bottle feeding might just shut their mouth and turn away when they've had enough. Or if they've had an excess amount, they will vomit it up. Children are the same. They can tell you through verbal or non-verbal communication by telling you, I don't really feel like any more now. And it's important we try and listen to them.
So you're really trusting their appetite and their needs as they change. Lexi, what about things like, we hear about 3 meals a day. What about snacks between meals? What sorts of things should we be thinking about offering our toddler?
So really focusing on healthy meals and healthy snacks is really important. Fruit, vegetables, we try not to give them too many empty snacks, so things like pretzels or potato chips, and really trying to use their hunger times. So kids will be hungry at different times of day. If you know your child is most hungry when they get home from kinder or childcare, having a really good, nutritious meal at that time ready for them is really helpful. They then can still sit with the whole family and at dinner time and eat a much smaller meal, or at least engage in conversation. But having that really good quality meal available is a really good tip.
What if your toddler is limiting foods or really avoiding certain food groups? When would it be time to seek some help from a professional?
Yeah, look, I think we all go through phases of eating certain food and then deciding not to. If your child is avoiding whole food groups, or if they're being really restricted in the types of food they're eating, or if your child is not growing or doesn't have much energy or doesn't appear healthy, definitely go and see your health practitioner, your GP in the first instance.
Okay, great. So thinking about then meal times with toddlers, which can be stressful and messy, and a time when the family might be tired at the end of a day or everyone's busy. How do we make meal times with toddlers relaxed and stress-free?
Look, I think our gold standard is always trying to make meal times fun and relaxed. That isn't always realistic. So maybe choose a few meals during the week, a few nights where you do have the time to sit down as a family and eat together. So involving the kids in the choice of what they're going to eat. So, if there's 2 different vegetables, they can choose which one. As we mentioned, they like to be assertive and they like choice. They might choose whether you put the food on their plate or whether they get to use a spoon and put it on their plate. So giving them choice at mealtime is really helpful. Mealtime can be loud, it can be messy. I often say, try not to eat on carpets, put a mat down on the floor. Kids are trying to explore. They want to taste, they want to smell, they, want to feel what food feels like. So letting them explore at a young age is really, really helpful.
And I suppose one of the things is, yes, make it fun and playful and let that toddler explore as they need to. But it's also about spending time together, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we want families to sit around at mealtimes where they can and have conversation. Not necessarily about food itself, just having a conversation amongst the adults with the children about their day and just making food a part of a normal day, not really focusing on it too much.
Right, so food's not the focus. What about things like removing mobile phones, for example, or turning off the TV? Is that a good thing to do at mealtimes as well?
Absolutely. Toddlers have a very short attention span, as do most of us as adults now. So removing those distractions, turning the TV off, turning the radio off, putting your phones away, role modelling for your kids that dinner time is a time for conversation and enjoying food together is really important. So minimise distractions as much as you can.
So, Lexi, just say we're up at the table, everyone's happy, having a great time, the toddler's there eating. Should you comment on them eating or praise them?
I think you can comment on their behaviour. So praise them for coming to the table, sitting at the table with you and having a conversation. But we don't want the focus to be about food. Food is part of normal everyday activity, and we want toddlers just to see it as typical that they sit at the table and eat and not make a big deal of it. If we make a big deal of it and use food as reward or food as a bribe or food as punishment, that is taking the focus more onto the food.
What about, though, treats? Because sometimes toddlers can respond to treats and things. Is that something we should do or not?
Look, it's really tempting, but if you can, try not to use food or sweets as treats. Using something like a sticker chart or, a sticker reward instead can be more beneficial, because we want, as I've mentioned, we want children just to see eating as part of, their normal day. And they then might say, oh, I ate my broccoli, so I'm going to get my ice cream. And then they see broccoli as bad food that I have to eat and the ice cream as the good food. So we really want to take that good and bad food out of it.
Should you set a time limit on meals?
Yeah, look, this is a really common question because, in some families, children are sitting there for long periods of time. We often say if they've eaten or not eaten their meal, usually about 20 minutes is enough. And then walk away, and you might try at a different time where they may be more hungry.
One of the things that you've said is so important is toddlers, they're discovering the world anew, they're developing all that fantastic independence, and part of that is involving them in meal preparation so they can have some choice around what they're eating. What are some of the ways that parents can do that?
Yeah, so you can start really young. So when, the babies are toddlers, you can take them to the supermarket or to the fruit shop and get them to help choose so they can point to which fruits they want to put in the basket. Then once you get home and you're preparing a meal, obviously safely, you don't want to give them a really sharp knife, but they can help, tear off the bread or put things into a bowl. You might remember when you were a kid, I remember cooking with my grandmother that she'd often let me lick the spoon or lick the bowl. And there's some beautiful memories, and that's just about exploring foods and tastes and textures as well. So getting them involved in the preparation is helpful, and then giving them some choice when they're at the table.
One of the things that I think I'm hearing strongly is that kids need to understand where food has come from as well, so that they can develop that better relationship with understanding what's a healthy choice, how has it grown. What are some of the ways that parents can do that, even in small ways at home, so that their children do understand about what healthy food choices are?
Yeah, so there's a big movement towards this. There's a kitchen garden program where a lot of kids at schools are learning about where food comes from. So it's about, planting that seed, watching that food product grow in the ground, then taking it and cooking with it. And if you can do that at home, that's fantastic. But there are also some programs as kids get older.
Or even I remember putting little herbs on the windowsill and my kids would watch them grow day to day. So just in small ways, I suppose, connecting them with food sources and healthy choices.
Absolutely. You don't need a whole vegetable crop, just starting small and doing what you're able to do as a family.
Lexi, thank you so much for sharing so many great tips and strategies for parents to use when trying to think about how to have more stress-free mealtimes with their toddlers. Have you got any closing advice for parents?
Yeah, look, I think it's important for parents to know that often you need to try a food 10 to 15 times before giving up. And, they might decide on the 15th time that they actually like that food. If it doesn't work, have a break, try again another time. So that's one tip. Another tip is be creative. Use different foods of different colours, make your faces on plates. Kids like being messy and creative, and just make food part of everyday life and try and make meal times fun and social for them.
And the other thing I suppose worth remembering is that all of us dislike some foods, and it's okay if your kids do too.
Oh, absolutely. Mads, you will not get me to eat Brussels sprouts. I've tried so many things, added sauces and flavours, but it's just a food I don't like. And that's okay. We don't all like every food.
Well, we all have different preferences, and they were one of my favourites growing up. So there you go. I still love a Brussels sprout. Well, thanks again, Lexi. It's been fabulous talking to you.
It's been an absolute pleasure being here.
So plenty of food for thought in tonight's chat. Let's recap what we uncovered about toddler mealtimes. Here's tonight's notes. It's common for kids to have phases of fussy eating. Their appetites can change day to day, just like ours. And choosing what to eat is another way that kids explore doing things themselves. If your child is healthy and has enough energy to play, learn and explore, they're probably eating enough. Moving the focus away from how much your toddler's eating can help make mealtimes more relaxed and enjoyable. And finally, try to get your toddler involved. You get a little kitchen helper, and we know this can really encourage toddlers to give food a try. As always, we've got plenty of handy links in the show notes so you can learn more about toddler mealtimes, plus get extra support. Check out our other episodes for more deep dives into those big parenting questions. And tonight, I hope you can rest a little easier.